be distributing the IP addresses to the client. So even if somebody is bringing their phone, it will still be done through the DHCP server. So that will be the Active Directory. The domain services uh, has the facility for every computer to join to the domain. But who gives the IP address? That is this service gives the IP address. So it is very closely knitted with ADDS and DNS, the DHCP server. So it's coming pretty late in the course, but still you can implement it at any time. So you can create this service on the virtual machine. Not necessarily it has to be um, on your primary server. Your primary server could have just a domain controller, and then you can have a DHCP on another server. But ideally, I would like domain controller and in the ADDS, DNS, and DHCP on one server. That is a good combination that I want on the main server, main hardware server. And Hyper-V's as a service can be installed, but all the Hyper-V machines I would suggest to be on the other drive. And same with the other services that we have learned so far could be distributed on different virtual servers. Um, I will probably leave around 5:45 today, so I will try to cover as much to be fast, and it has a lot of things to cover, so I'll be a little fast. So as we can see, there are two Ethernet adapters that are installed on this server, Ethernet 0 and Ethernet 1. We will be focusing on Ethernet 0. We will not be looking at Ethernet 1. Ethernet 0 has an IP address of 192.168.1.1. Ideally, I would like to have it done it on 10.0.0.11 because that is the IP address that we are seeing throughout. But test out has another ideas, so I will follow that. Uh, this will be the default gateway router address, and also our DNS server will be the same address. Because when we learned about DNS, we have used this kind of IP address, the 10 ones, but again, I have no control over the test out, so they have changed their mind. So they are using this IP address. So this will be the IP address that our DNS will be configured. The DNS will be some DNS server IP would be somewhere around um, 1.1 or 1.2, so something in the same range. So we'll go and add a role, very straightforward installation, add a role, role-based installation, and then we will look for DHCP. It's not a feature, it's a server role. So we have ideally, as I said, Active Directory domain services and DNS already installed, and I want another. As you can see, there is no other services installed. Probably one down there, probably not a heavy one, but these three are should be a combination on your primary server. We go ahead and install that. As soon as we do that, there are features. We agree to everything that they say, and then we move on to the next. In this screen, we are not doing anything, so we'll move next. So this is the one screen where I've highlighted it. What's the DHCP server? This is the definition coming out of Microsoft, so no one changing that. And I have specifically highlighted this part here. We'll look into that. Let's look at what they say about DHCP. The DHCP is the dynamic host control protocol, allows the server to assign or lease the IP addresses to the computers and the devices that are enabled as DHCP clients. Deploying DHCP server on the network provides computer and other TCP/IP based network devices with the valid IP addresses and the additional configuration parameter that these devices need, called DHCP options. Um, this allows computers and devices to connect to other network resources such as DNS servers, Win servers, and routers. Things to note, the important part, you should you should configure at least one static IP address on this computer. So as we said, this computer is our ADDS, this computer is our DNS. So this computer should have a static IP address. And those of you who know, when I was teaching the IP addressing topic, I made sure that you have to have your domain controller have to have a static IP, because you don't want the domain controller to have random IP addresses at each time when it is booted up, because it fetches the random IP addresses. But because it's a static IP address, we are good here. But this is the primary response thing that we want to focus on this server. Before you install DHCP server, you should plan the subnets, scopes, and exclusion. Store the plan in a safe place for later references, meaning that at this point in your career, you should be thinking, if everything is well thought out and planned, it has to be follow certain plan. If you are not a good planner, you are just a desktop support person running one computer to another computer, just fixing printers and minor software related issues. This is not the game for you, because you are using the server, you are playing with the server, you already have good idea about ADDS and DNS. Now you are doing the DHCP installation, so you should be good at network. That's what it is essentially saying, that this is a project for you, even though these are handful of slides, uh, but this has to be planned out with couple of network guys sitting on the table, not just saying that yeah, it's we are ready to go and install it. So you need to know what are the scopes, what are the VLANs and subnets that you are clearing. Now we are talking in terms of network lingo, so you have to have a good plan on it. And I'd suggest, before you do that, uh, consult a couple of experienced guys when you are doing the DSCP, because it's a make or break. Or maybe just do a test installation on a test server. As I said yesterday in the last class, um, you need to have three servers at least. One your primary, one is your backup secondary one, and third is your playground area, which could be a very cheap used server which you can buy. It doesn't need to be, but there you can install the DHCP, and you can branch off one or two clients just to test out if your DHCP is working. So it takes a little bit of uh, knowledge and work to work with. So this is a little advanced topic, I would say, in the server world, but every company has it, so it's not that advanced, but uh, needs a team to work on it. So you click confirmation and install. This is a summary that I'm going to install the DHCP install on it, and then the DHCP is installed. Now it comes with a saying that it has some other features that it needs to install. So you are closing here, but you are starting some other features that it wants to install. So DHCP post install configuration wizard. This is done. Features is installed. So this is, it will ask you a few more questions uh, here. So it says description. I need to install these two more features as a post installation. You click next. Here's the important parts to read. This has to be done by the network administrator. So this is the option by default, has to be authorized by the network. I would not suggest skip AD control. If you, why it is important, these two configurations, two parts. We don't want any ROG DHCP server, as a ROG DHCP server hands out the wrong IP address. What is mean by ROG DHCP server? For example, you have two network administrator. Another, obviously it should be a thought out plan. But if somebody is good at his job and he's already installed the DHCP server on another server, which is already on your network. So what will happen if you install this service on another server? This could be the second server you're installing the DHCP. Then problem with it, one of them will become the ROG, and we don't want the ROG DHCP server. A ROG DHCP, if there are, imagine there are two people giving out the IP, the same numbers, it could be a problem, because uh, two servers with the same privileges standing as a leader and standing out the IP address, and you give 192.168.1.10 to one system, one of the client came and requested you give, and the other system is standing and he says that okay, I'll give you another IP address 192.168.1.10, or he might give something saying 10.10.0 10.10.10.10 to you. So you will be thinking I am one client, but two people. I was expecting one IP address, but this guy is sending me this IP address and the other guy is sending me the same IP address or a different IP address. Why is that? So you can imagine that. So by accident, someone can install a DHCP on the same network and you don't know, and the same on the same network segment and the other server, and not realizing that and hence the DHCP client requests the IP address and the IP address handed by the wrong server, which you are not expecting. So conflict, or somebody want to bring down the network for malicious reasons, they can also do deliver the DHCP option for the DHCP DNS that that points to a malicious website. Yes, instead of the popular sites like Amazon and banking sites, and to foster and exploit. So this has to be authorized by by the administrator, meaning that only one man is standing and giving out the uh, IP addresses. So I would suggest this is just to give you a why, but if you don't want to spend brain on it, you can just say yes, I will authorize the server to have this, because particularly this could have happened in the past in other network environments. That's why they have realized that we make this as an authorization from the administrator. So obviously, if an administrator has already done, he must have known that this has been done in the past. So I will not do that again. So just a stop point actually. So it will do, when you click next, it will say, okay, I'm going to do the further two post installation things. So I am done and close, and then it finishes the installation. So you can see your DHCP is installed. You go to tools and look at the DHCP is running on this, and you can see you have now ADDS, DHCP, and DNS, all three combo, which I wanted here. Obviously, I don't want. Obviously, we know we need file and storage services for the backups, but I would suggest keep the IIS and the remote on the other server. If you can take it out from here, that's fine, because you don't want to. This is already overloaded production server if it would be. Now, if you go and click on DHCP, it will open up this interface for you, just like we have an interface for backup and replication that we saw yesterday. So now it says that, yeah, I have a DHCP running, but DHCP is right now pretty much empty. It says, yeah, DHCP is running on dc11.nordsim.com. Let's expand a little bit. Now you expand it, and it's when you expand it, the same thing that you are seeing IPv4 and IPv6, you are seeing same here. You can always go ahead and restart those services. You can restart it, and once the DHCP is started, let's go and look at what are the things that we can do. So it is currently authorized server for DHCP. We can always go back and unauthorize that. I would suggest once you authorize a server, never try to unauthorize that, because this is where your inventory of IP address will be pooled. So once you authorize the server, keep it that way. Don't mess around with your DHCP server too much. So once it's authorized, once there are no clients, you can do as many times as you can. Once you decided that this will be your DHCP server and you started assigning people the IP address from here, I don't suggest to unauthorize it at that moment, because it has become a source of distribution. So you can do as many times authorized and unauthorized. Just to show you, before nothing is been started to grant from here, you can click on unauthorized, and it says that, are you sure you want to do that? You say yes, and you can see it has our red boxes with the cross signs on it, saying that this server, even though DHCP is installed, will not be assigning the IP address So you go ahead and say, no, okay, I decided I'll move forward with this one. So you can right click and authorize it. And once you authorize it, those green signs will come back. So that's what I want. So let's imagine the green signs are back. We are seeing that the DHCP is running on it, and we can see the Ethernet 0 points to 192.168.1.1. The Ethernet 1 points to this, as we saw in the start of the lecture. So let's see what we are trying to do here. Okay, so we'll say add or remove binding. So we are adding binding. So all the authorized and unauthorized 100 times I want to do, I can do it. But once I start to bind everything to this server, I will not be doing that. So you say add and remove binding. You add and remove binding. Which IP address I will be focusing on? I will uncheck 10.0.0.11 because this will be my server distributing the IP pool from 192.168.1.1 to 192.168.1.254 because it starts from 0 to 255. We take 1 till 254. Okay, so this one we select it. Good, looks good. And say now what we want to do. We want to, okay, so it looks good. It looks good. Unfortunately, in this slide, I can't show you what are the 3 boxes it has added. Once I did that, we'll see that fairly shortly. We right click on this IPv4 and say new scope. So it gives me 3 options here: server options, policies, and filters. We'll look at the server options shortly, but what we wanted to do is add a new scope. In the scope, what we are going to do, in this scope, we will gonna say that no, the scope name that I'm creating is not sim available addresses. Okay, we are going through another small wizard inside that for the server scope because we are creating a new scope. So we'll leave the description as is. We move to the next screen. The pool of IP addresses that will be allowed to hand out. So we have 192.168.1.1 to 192.168.1.254. As I said, we might want to have some IP addresses for static and some IP addresses that will be a pool from wherever I can go and distribute the random uh, IP addresses to the client. So imagine it's a it's a chit it's a box of uh, 1 to 254 IP addresses, uh, pieces of paper that each children will come and you distribute the candy to them. So you have a big pool of 254 IP addresses and you'll assign them the numbers as they request, as they come forward to you. So you are doing the same thing here. It's saying out of those 254, how many you want, who you don't want to distribute and keep it for VIPs, right? So you'll say probably 50 I will keep up for VVIPs, uh, that when they will come, I will give them every time the same IP address. But if children comes, I'll hand them this uh, this chit or these toffees to each of the children, right? So that's the idea behind it. That will make it a little easier for you to understand. So you'll say that 192.168.1.2 till 1.254. Obviously 1.1 belongs to this server. And so I don't want to include that, even though if I will include that, this server has already been assigned the static IP, so it should not conflict. But if I'm a good practitioner, I will say, okay, I know this server has 192.168.1.1. So why raise a conflict? I will just start one step ahead of it and say that you don't even have to match that who has one. I make life easier for you. You start giving from 2 to 254. Now, subnet mask. What is the subnet mask I want to give? This can be changed from class C to class B. Right now, it is class C because it is 255.255 255.255.0, but this doesn't mean that I'm stuck with it. I can give 255.255.0.0 or even class A as well, 255.0.0.0. Okay. Um, Again, uh, it's not very flexible once you are done with the binding and everything. So make your decisions. That's why it shows the planning, that even though you're not stuck with it, but once you start distributing to many clients, don't make these changes. Once they are there, they are there. For example, your company will not ever grow from 255 employees, so you will say that 255.255.255 is valid. But let's say you say, no, I will probably have, in 5 years time, I'm seeing that I will probably have thousands clients, then you will run out of the subnet mask and then you will have an issue. So this is again a decision that you have to make. So maybe make it a class B and then make it life easier and not have to think about it ever. Or if you make it C, if it's a small size company, medium size company, 100 10 to 100 employees, then you should be good. However, after the creation, you are stuck with this. So again, decision to be made here. uh, Add exclusions and delays. We will come back to that later. We'll go to the next. Um, so at this point, as I said, VVIPs are not entertained. We are giving out all the IP address. I think we have a slide for it afterwards, but I will explain to that, explain to you how static IPs will be pooled. But as you can see, this server already has a static IP, so I can keep first 50 IPs for a static. So I can may start from uh, 50, 192.168.1.50 till 192.168.1.254. Then my first 49 IPs will be reserved for static IPs. But at this point, what I'm seeing is none of the IP addresses reserved for VVIPs. So every IP address is there for distribution. I'll come back to this screen later. Now it says that once the client gets the IP address, how long you want that IP address to be reserved. For example, a guest came for 10 minutes connected to my Ethernet cable, which I don't want them to be connected uh, because who knows what viruses they are bringing it. But let's say they come in and they have a work for 10 minutes. You don't have control over some people arriving and they plug in your Ethernet cable. You should have a strict IT policy for that. But anyway, somebody just came in and plugged in. And even those who are regular users, they bring the company's laptop, take home, and let's say they came for 10 minutes and they walk away, but your IP address will be reserved at least for 4 hours. Okay, so we'll read that. You can run out of the IP address in the dynamic environment if there is a higher lease time. So let's say in a dynamic environment where there are so many guests coming in, you can run off you can run out of IP address if you have a higher lease time. For example, you reserve for 8 hours, and let's say you have bunch of guests came in today, more than 250. So you will run out of IP addresses, right? Because more than 254, then you will run out of IP address. So you have to make it 4 hours. That's fine. And what your server does is proactively, before, if the client is still connected and there is over, for example, 3 hours and 70 uh, almost 4 hours is touching, your client will proactively goes and says that I'm about to approach my lease time getting over, can you give me for 4 more hours? And sure, I'll give you keep I'll keep I'll not give you a new IP address. You can use the same IP address that you are connected, because I know you are connected for 4 hours. So it's no harm, it will be distributed. But again, it's a matter between number of clients versus the lease time. If you lease it more hours, more clients that you have, they will run out and if you have a fear to run out of your IP address, then you will have that issue. If you have an 8 hour, if you give it for 4 hours, then if somebody has came for 10 minutes, that IP address will still be released after after that 4 hours. And if somebody has uh, came here for 5 hours, he can still have the IP address for 4 hours full and then 1 hours afterwards. So this is a standard practice. I would say keep it for 4 hours. That's fine. Again, this is a planning decision, not just one person, but just there to explain. Uh, okay. Do you want DHCP options for the scope now? Yes, might as well. We'll do it now. Uh, so it is saying what will be the default gateway address. You will give this, and then you will say parent domain is notsim.com. So you just added that. If you want to activate the scope now, sure, is activate the scope and you are finished. So now your scope is created for NotSim available addresses starting from 192.168. You know, it knows the network address where it is being started. You can, as I said, deactivate this if you are doing some maintenance on this scope. As I said, we are not unauthorizing here on the domain. We are one step down here. So we have seen some other options here. Uh, you can bring it down in the after hours, office hours, but if you deactivate it, make sure in during the office hours, if you do that, then it will stop assigning the IP address. The client then the client will still will try to get access and try to say what is my IP address, and it will not be assigned. So this is a kind of a maintenance thing if you are doing, and there will be some DHCP maintenance slides that you will see in test out, which I am not going over. If the scope is currently active, disabling this will result in the issues, and you can say that okay, that's fine, you have disabled it. Turn red and it's not active. It will turn this thing red and will not be active. I think it is not red, it is blue. So you can see it is turned into blue and it's not active. Once you are done maintenance, you can activate it back again and it will still start handing out the uh, IP address. So now we can see um, under this, once we expand that, we have address pool. We have address pool. We can see starting from 192.168. All the configurations we have done is not lost. It is stored somewhere as a piece of information in this small database of things. So address pools, yes, we know we have configured that. Address leases, we have configured that. Let's look at that, the properties. So this is in a nutshell what we have done when we started the wizard. We authorized, we give the IP address from 2 to 54. This is the subnet mask, but notice that this is not changeable. You are stuck with it. This is changeable. You can create the pool. You can change the pool. As I said, VVIPs will come and you can give them the pool, but this is not changeable. This is the least time that we discussed about. So 1, 2, and 3, but this one is not available for us. So we are stuck with it after we are done. And then some other options. If you go to DNS, I will leave this as is. Keep this check boxes and read. If you want to read more about it, you can uh, look at those options. Your DNS is always up to date with the list of DHCP client being created. Leave it as is. So don't have to worry about that. All the DHCP options that are configured only apply at the scope we have defined. Uh, if you have multiple scopes, then the second option is viable, is also viable, and you can move the scope from the stack to the server level. So scope is available at this level as well. So you can have multiple scopes, but you probably have a scope for, let's say, cameras. Uh, you have a scope for printers, you can have a scope for clients which you are distributing, you can have a scope for VVIPs or managements, so you can have scope. So at that time you will have you can work on the scope that to the server level. You can do the scoping here as well. So say that you want whatever scope you want to assign. So this covers the topic for the DSCP. There's lot more information. Uh, I would say address lease is the one that you guys can have a look, where you can assign the static IPs. So there are certain computers that will not be moving. Obviously the desktop computers, once they sit there for years, so you can reserve the IP address for those. But do remember that once sometimes it happens that you don't take out those IP addresses once you decommission, so it will still be sitting in the DSCP with the computer that has already been decommissioned. So you have to periodically come back maybe after a couple of years and check certain computers who are being thrown away. It's just a matter of one IP address to be released, because you assign them the static IP in the address leased section. In the address leased section, what you do is you statically assign uh, that I know this computer is not moving anytime soon. So just give it uh, just hand over this IP address every 4 hours or every 8 hours. That's where every 4 hours and every 8 hours come into contention, because if you have a dynamic environment where people are bringing laptops and mobile phones more than the desktop, then I will say lease it less. If in your environment you have a lot of desktops and computers are not being moved away, so you can lease it for 8 hours. That way your DHCP doesn't have to exert pressure of forcing out the IP addresses every 4 hours. It will wait for 8 hours and then hand over the IP address. Okay.